Hi guys, it's Erin the Tacky Painter, and today we're going to paint this Orca moon painting. I have my 8x10 inch canvas sheet here, and the picture-in-picture should be up in that corner. If you enjoy painting this with me today, feel free to click the thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to my channel and click the bell to be notified when I add new videos. Now let's get tacky. I've got my watercolor pencils here to draw it in. These are water soluble, which means they'll blend into the paint when I paint over them. So I'm going to use a ruler. You can eyeball it if you want. On this 8x10 inch canvas, I'm going to go up to about 4.5 inches and draw my horizon line. You want to make sure your horizon line is level because water is level. Just mark it and draw it across. You can also use a bigger canvas if you like. Use any size that you have. You could paint this on a rock if you wanted to. Now I'm going to go find something that I can trace to draw the moon. So I've just found one of my kids' toys and I'm going to trace over that for my moon. You can use something bigger or smaller, and I'm using my watercolor pencil. And there's the moon. Alright, I've got Phalo Blue, Diox Purple, and Titanium White, and a medium bright brush. I'm going to dip it in my water and wipe it off. I just want to mention that all the materials as well as a link to the traceable will be in the description below. I've got some of my purple and I'm just going to start putting in the underpainting for our ocean. I know it looks blue on the camera, but that's the purple. I'm just making horizontal brush strokes and just filling it in. Remembering to breathe and have fun and relax. Try not to be stressed out about anything. And if I'm going too fast, don't forget you can always pause. Don't feel rushed. Take your time. Or the blue. And as I get up closer to the line, I'm going to use the edge of my brush to have a little bit more control. Now I'm using Liquitex Basics, which is a student paint, so I'm going to need more than one layer, and that's perfectly fine, and you may need that too. Using the edge of the brush again up close to that line. And if you make a mistake, don't worry about it because we're adding more layers on top of this. Getting a little more purple and just coming down to the bottom and making it darker on the bottom. And there, that's our underpainting for the water, and we'll move on to the moon. So I've got more blue on my palette, and I'm going to paint in the dark spots on the moon first. So to do that, I'm just going to take some blue and put it right there. This is my underpainting for the moon, so it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm using short, choppy brush strokes back and forth just to add texture. Looking at my reference photo and deciding where I want the dark spots to be. I'm taking a little purple just to make it even darker. rinsing out my brush because I'm going to move on to a lighter color, so I'm getting some pigment off and wiping it on my rag. Now I'll get into the white and mix in a little bit of blue. And put on this lighter value. Just choppy brush strokes, little X's almost. And don't worry if you go outside the line, because we're going to come in with black paint and paint around it. And every moon is going to look different. Don't be afraid of that. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Each time I paint it, it's going to look different. We're not copy machines. So don't feel bad if it doesn't look exactly like the reference photo. Just wherever you need it. And that's our underpainting for the moon. I'm going to rinse out my brush and set it aside until I need it again. You don't want to let your brushes sit in the water, that's not good for them. So now everything is dry. I've got my smaller bright brush. I'm going to dip it in the water to get it ready to go. Wipe it off. And I'm going to get into white and blue. This is going to be the next lighter color. And I'm going to go into the lighter spots on my moon. This edge over here is going to be lighter. Some right there. Grabbing more color. And up on this edge, it's going to be very bright. Choppy brush strokes again. This should be very relaxing for you. Don't feel stressed about what your moon looks like. Rinsing out my brush and wiping it off. You don't want drips. Getting some blue and going back over the dark spots again. Remember, acrylics are all about the layers. But it's important that the bottom layer dries before you paint another layer on top. Rinsing out again. And I've got to let this dry before I can do another layer on top. So the water's dry and I'm getting back into my medium bright and I can paint my next layer on the water. So getting into my purple and starting at the bottom with this dark purple color. I'm using horizontal brush strokes to imply this is water. Getting into my blue now. And just going back and forth. Need more paint on my palette, so I'm just getting my Phalo Blue You don't have to put out a lot of paint, you can always put out more. But it's real hard to put it back in. And like I said, if I'm going too fast, feel free to pause. Using the edge of the brush as I get closer to the line. And that layer on the water is done, and I've got to let that dry before I add my reflections. Okay, now it's dry. I'm going to add my reflections. It's going to be wider the closer it is to the moon, and more narrow as it gets closer to me. So I'm mixing up a lighter blue color. I've got water in this bottle and I'm misting my palette. That's just so I can work with the paint longer, because acrylic dries really fast. And once it's dry, you can't work with it anymore. So I spray my palette with just water. Just going back and forth with this lighter blue color to imply a reflection in the water. And this is just one layer. There's going to be more layers on top of this, and they're going to get lighter as we go. Then I'm rinsing out my brush. And I'm going to work on the lightest layer on our moon. So I'm getting in just the white. And right on this edge, it's going to be really bright. The moon's really going to pop when we paint the black background on. That's the fun part. Getting more of my white. And turning my canvas so that it's easier for me. And I'm putting the white on this edge as well. And look at your reference photo and just add the brightest white wherever you think you need it. I think that's pretty good. And you can always go back and change things as you go along. And you can fiddle with it as much as you want until you think you've got it the way you like. You could spend a lot of time on this and make it look really realistic if you wanted to. Now I'm going to work on the water some more. So I'm going to mix in white with a little bit of blue. And work on the next layer in my reflection. Just horizontal strokes, zigzagging. Getting smaller as it gets closer to me. And that's good for that layer. So See how it's kind of in a V? I'm rinsing out, wiping off. Now I'm going to paint the black sky. So I've got to put some black out on my palette. And I'm going to find my bigger bright brush. And these are from Black Pearl, from Silver Brush. Getting it wet, wiping it off, and getting into my black. And remember, you can use any colors that you like in this painting. Remember, if I'm going too fast and you need to catch up, just hit the pause button. Don't feel bad about doing that. Remember, if you're using a bigger canvas, it's going to take more paint. And speaking of more paint, I need some more on my palette. I'm also getting a little bit of water on my brush so the paint glides easier on the canvas. I'm being a little bit more careful as I get close to the moon. If you need to come back and retrace your circular object, you can do that too. Just being more careful and going slower. But even if I do mess up, I can always just let the paint dry and paint over it. Don't hold your breath when you're painting, even if you want to. You can't paint if you're not breathing. Using the edge of the brush to get more control, and turning the canvas again so I don't have to reach as far. Don't be afraid to do that. Now the moon's really starting to pop and look more 3D. And if this black doesn't cover good the first time, you can always come back with another layer. And touch up any spots that you need. Flip it back over, be very careful, and rinse out your brush really well. Don't leave that paint in there. Now we've got to let our sky dry before we add our stars. So we're going to work on the next part, which is our whale. So I've got my chalk here, and I'm just going to draw in the shape. That's our general shape right there. You can put it wherever you want. You could have it be a mermaid or a dolphin, whatever you like. And I'm using chalk because chalk will come right off with just a little bit of water. And there will be a traceable up on my website, and the link to my website will be in the description. So you don't have to freehand it in if you don't want to. Now drawing in where his white spots are going to be. Right above the eye. And over here on his belly. And now he's drawn in. I've got my smaller bright brush, dipped it in the water, and I'm just taking black and painting him in. I know when I first started out, it would have made me anxious to paint over what I already did. But in order to get his silhouette over the moon, that's what you gotta do. Remember, you can add water to your paint to help with the flow. And if your paint doesn't cover very well, then you can add another layer. I'm just having fun painting him in, breathing and relaxing, not being stressed about it. Painting in his tail. And that part's done. I'm going to rinse out my brush. And I'm going to paint in the white parts, but I'm going to use a mixture of blue and white. Because it's nighttime, you wouldn't have bright white parts. So this is my first layer. And we're going to have a few more layers on top of this. And that's in, so I'm going to rinse out my brush. And now we're going to work on his splash. I'm going to put it right about there, right in the center, underneath him. Taking my light blue color. And to start off, I'm just going to make a relatively straight line. Now I'm just going to dab, dab, dab my brush to imply splash. Just making random dabs. Some higher than others. And we're going to come back with a lighter color and a darker color on this. I'm going to rinse out, get some of the pigment off. And I've got my dark color here. I think I took some blue and purple, and I'm adding a shadow underneath. Just right underneath the splash, because there would be a shadow. Now I'm rinsing out, wiping off, and I'm going to get just my white and come back and add highlights on this splash. right at the top. This sort of helps it stand out. You can see it better on the camera now. Just dabbing randomly. And there's that. Rinsing out. I'm getting more of my Phalo Blue on my palette. Getting a dark color and adding it to my shadow underneath the splash. And using a little bit up into the splash as well. Just to sort of get rid of that line. So it blends into the water. And rinsing out. Now I've got my smaller brush. It's a small round. I'm just going to use it to make even smaller dots on the splash using my white. And I added a little bit of blue to it. I'm doing the next lightest highlight on the white parts of the whale, just right up at the top. I'm rinsing out. And I've zoomed back out now. I've got that smaller round brush again. And I'm getting into just white. And I'm going to do the stars. Going basically up and down and just dotting in random places. If you put too much pressure, your star is going to be too big. Just light pressure, dotting. Just try to have fun. You can do as many or as few stars as you want. Make some bigger and some smaller. Now we're going to add the last highlight on the white parts of his skin. Mostly white. Not totally white, but mostly white. And just right up at the top. Acrylics dry darker, so you might have to come back with more lighter layers after it's dried, because acrylics do dry darker. I'm rinsing out, and I'm getting my medium bright brush. And I'm going to add another brighter layer to my reflections in the water. Just back and forth, light pressure. Horizontal strokes using the edge of my brush. Now I've got my small round brush again. I'm going to do the highlights on the black part of his skin. So I'm getting blue and white. And the parts where the light is hitting him, I'm adding a highlight. On top of his fin and on his back. Making more of that light blue color. On his tail. And wherever else you think you need it. And I'm rinsing out, and I think we're done. So I want to remind you that there's always something to look forward to, and I look forward to painting with you guys next time. Bye bye.